להתקדם. בואו תפתחו, תנו לרב לעבור בבקשה. תנו לרב לעבור.
Hi, and welcome to the Diamond Report for Friday, April 9th, 2021. This is your host, Doug Diamond. Well, I've got some breaking news here, and if you just watched the last couple of minutes, you may be wondering, who is this guy? I was wondering that exact same thing a few days ago when I watched this video for the first time. Thank you to all who sent me this video, as well as some other links to articles and things like that, too, because it's helped me do a little bit of research on who this person is, and we're going to dive into that in this video. Now, all of this happened at the very beginning of Passover. This video clip we just watched happened on March 27th at sundown, March 27th through sundown, April 3rd. That was Passover. The place where all of this was occurring was at the Western Wall in Jerusalem. And what was all the hubbub about this person who was there? They were treating him like a rock star, like some sort of celebrity. And everyone there knew who he was. But I sure didn't. I didn't know who he was, and many of you probably don't either. So let's take a look a little closer. If you've been watching my Take It to the Lord in Prayer End Times Dates series, you will know that I had been saying that March of 2021 is going to be an important month. And I still stand by that. I was saying that that will be the revealing of the Antichrist in March of 2021, based on what I was getting in prayer, but also on the 3.5 years following the Revelation 12 sign, which happened in September of 2017. 3.5 years later put us to March this year. So I really felt like something important would be happening, and indeed it may very well have. We're going to look at that a little closer. As far as World War III goes, if you've been following at all what's happening between the Ukraine and NATO versus Russia, you will know that March 24th was a very important date in that whole mess, and World War III may very well have just started. Now, rockets and missiles and bullets aren't really flying yet, and hopefully they won't. However, I'm just going off of what I'm getting in prayer, and that was that World War III will start. And again, going back to the very first episode of Take It to the Lord in Prayer, End Times Dates, I was saying that September of this year, 2021, will be the signing of the peace plan. And whoever's peace plan that is, that's presented in September, that person will be the Antichrist. We will briefly take a look at how World War III may very well have started in a little bit. But first, let's get into more about this person at the Western Wall in Jerusalem. The first thing I did when I found this YouTube channel was I looked up this guy's name. Now, I'm not Jewish, so I had no idea really what any of that meant. And I did finally find some articles about him, and this is part of his name, Shlomo Yehuda. And so we're going to take a look at that a little closer. So this is his YouTube channel. You can see that he's got over 1,400 subscribers. And when I first came to this channel, there was 660 some subscribers. So I thought, that's interesting. So I watched a couple of his videos. This is the one that we just saw at the beginning of this video. And then I watched these other two. And I think I watched this one eventually. And then when I came back, there was a few more subscribers. And it was already at 665 subscribers. So when I clicked subscribe, I was literally the 666th subscriber to Shlomo Yehuda's channel. What are the chances? And because I knew what I was looking at as far as who this person could potentially be, I knew the importance of it. So I took a screenshot. So if you don't believe me, you can see that when I clicked subscribe, I was number 666. Other than making those two little spots yellow, no other photoshopping has happened. I was literally number 666. So I think God was trying to tell me something here. Now, based on what I've read about this guy, I think it's important to note that he probably does not have time to manage his own YouTube channel. And case in point, if you go down through here and read any of the comments on his video, you'll see that some people are literally calling him the Antichrist. And some people are saying, well, is this the Jewish Messiah or the moshiach? And you can see that there are a lot of comments. I'll let you guys read through that if you want to go to his channel and investigate further. However, I do find it interesting that even though he's probably not managing his own channel, they are letting the comments stand. Like, it doesn't seem to bother them that people are saying he's the Antichrist or the people are saying he's the Messiah. That really makes me wonder, because if it was my channel and someone was calling me the Antichrist, their comments would not make it onto my channel. I would delete them or moderate them before that even happened. No one is doing that on Shlomo Yehuda's channel, which tells me it either doesn't bother them or maybe it's not really that big a deal to him. I just don't know. And when we go back and look at the other videos on the channel, I would say that this channel primarily is set up to showcase who this person is, Shlomo Yehuda, and the things that he is doing and has done. So this is like and you'll see in a minute when we look at this PDF, this is kind of like a brochure on how great this guy is, which I think is pretty interesting. I mean, someone working for him put this video that we just watched at the beginning of my video, they put that on his channel. It's like it's really important to him or to someone close to him that people or the world know that the world is clamoring about this guy. I just think that's super interesting. And you'll note that it does have 14,000 views as of right now. And these other ones have ticked up a bit as well. But this is the one that people are really watching, and it's on this guy's channel. So you can take that for what it's worth. If you remember in part 9 of my series, I talked about we want Moshiach now, and the global prayer that happened on Sunday, February 21st, 2021. Now, if we look at the calendar here, going back to February 21st, 2 weeks would have been the 7th of March. 2 more weeks was the 21st. And then, so that's 4 weeks, 28 days, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34 days, put us right at the beginning of Passover, which is when that video was made, where they were giving him the rock star treatment. That's the beginning of Passover. It ran from the 27th through the 3rd. So that got me wondering, okay, what does 34 days represent, if anything? Because I'm really in tune, I feel like, to numbers as far as that's one way God communicates, at least to me, is I notice him in numbers. So I figured, okay, there's got to be some significance for 34 because it was 34 days from the prayer to this Passover in the video that we just watched, right? So properties of the number 34. 34 symbolizes the power and realization of the man. I thought, wow, that's pretty interesting. And you could read this if you want to, writingthebeast.com. You can pull this up. But I thought this one was pretty wild. Look at this. The word devil is used 34 times in the Bible. 1 time in the Old Testament and 33 times in the New Testament. So who is Rabbi Shlomo Yehuda Berry? And why does he have these throngs of people around him, these people that are trying to get closer to him? What's going on here? So this PDF was actually posted by him on his YouTube channel in response to a comment where someone wanted to know more about who he was. He already had this PDF prepared, and you can see it's very professionally done. I'm a graphic designer, so I know really great graphics when I see them, and this was done really well. And you can see there's quite a few pages here. We're not going to read all this, but I do want to give you some highlights because I think it's important. But you can see all of the people around this guy. Like I said, throngs of people who are waiting around to hear him speak. Now, for those of you who would like this PDF and don't know where to find it, I'm going to post a link to it in the description box below. And because I'm not sure that his original Google Drive link will stay up if he has a lot of pushback, I'm going to put it on my own server in my own place where anybody can download it if they want to, because I think it's really important. And note that much of the graphics here is, even though a lot of it is in English, the sidebars are, much of it is still in Hebrew. So because of that, we're not going to be able to read the Hebrew. The other thing is, Rabbi Shlomo Yehuda Berry is way too many words for me to remember and keep saying over and over. So I'm not going to say that. I'm going to call him what everyone else calls him. And that's basically a nickname. It's the Yanuka. Yanuka. He's known as the Yanuka, not as Rabbi Shlomo Yehuda Berry. Some people do say Rabbi Shlomo Yehuda. They do go that far. But they usually leave the Berry part, his last name, off. Or they just call him the Yanuka. And I'll explain what the Yanuka is here in just a second. But let's read just a little bit. This will give you a really good idea who this guy is. I find it kind of interesting the way this PDF is written because it's sort of written with this mystique about it. I won't read all of it. I'll leave that to you if you really want to. But it starts sort of mysterious, and you can almost envision like at a rock concert with the fog rolling out before the band comes on the stage, that sort of thing. That's kind of what this puts me in mind of. It's a little cheesy in a way, honestly, but on the other hand, it's good info. So let's start right here. The voice which rises from the east rises quietly and modestly. The humility is clear to see. He does not feel that he is worthy of speaking before such crowds, led by the Roshei Yeshiva who sit before him. But slowly, slowly, as the minutes pass, he is detached from the reality in which he stands and floats, together with his listeners, through the pages of the Gematria as his voice continues to gain strength. But not only Gematria. Talmud Yerushalmi is also poured on the table like wine, and along with that, Sifrei, Sifra, Midrash, Rabbah, Talmudic legends, Rishonim, Akaronim, Zohar, and the writings of the Ari, Chassidic teachings, and the halachic works, both ancient and new. Sorry, I'm kind of struggling through that because I'm not Jewish. I don't know what those things mean, but I do know what the Talmud is, and I do know what the Zohar is, and it's not good. The Yanuka is careful to cite each verse, statement, or opinion. Where exactly is it located? Naming the source is not enough. He cites the page and the edition in which the words are brought and the variant versions contained in other editions. The look of curiosity on the face of those gathered slowly transforms to stares of disbelief. They rise from their places, stretch their necks, and strain their eyes and ears to ensure that they don't miss any of the sights and the sounds. They have never experienced anything quite like this, where the Torah is delivered by heart, as if the one who sits before them has been learning for hundreds or thousands of years. How's that for drama? But together with the unbelievable breadth of knowledge, the listeners imbibe the magic of his love of Torah. He speaks of the Torah as the joy in his life, like an unparalleled diamond. That word really caught my attention. The pinnacle of his aspirations, a burning desire which synthesizes the material and spiritual in order to perfect creation, together to encourage others and inspire them to perfect their character. If anyone who believed that a lecture on interpersonal honor and the perfection of character traits was merely the sphere of lecturers and storytellers, the Yanuka opens up a new and fascinating vantage point. His words are founded on his tremendous grasp of the ritual laws of purity, but really from all areas of the Torah. He coaxes all of his limitless knowledge in order to best deliver his message. Quote, have respect for one another. The magic continues for 2 uninterrupted hours. On his table, there are no books, papers, or even index cards. Everything is derived from his memory. During the shiur, he provides novel interpretations as well. The spring does not cease to rush for even a moment. As he nears his conclusion, he finishes with Gematria, numerical mnemonic devices to recall what was learned, which is like Gematria. All of this phenomenal knowledge he weaves together to produce a brilliant approach whose bottom line is actionable messages. When he concludes, the silence continues by sheer force of inertia. Even a fly would dare not disturb the synaesthetic feeling in the hall. The crowd at first continues to stare at him as if in a hypnotic state, and then look at one another in order to take stock of the impressions of others in the crowd. Listen how dumbfounded this group of Israelis, these rabbis and so forth are. It's pretty amazing. However, those who believed that this was the end of the drama are mistaken. After he revealed his strength in all areas of the Torah, in math and Jewish thought, he sits near the special piano which was brought by one of his students and begins to play the emotional tune which he strums with professional acuity. As always, he completes a Talmudic tractate, and the entire crowd celebrates in a sight that is seemingly right out of a world of imagination. Even after the musical performance is ended, he does not leave his spot. One by one, crowd approaches to see him up close. First, the rabbis approach. They bombard him with questions from all areas of the Torah. After them, the Avrakim and Yeshiva Brokurim approach with their own queries and novel ideas. The beauty of Torah envelops the hall. The silence that characterized the prior 2 hours has been crushed, and the fire of Torah spreads like wildfire to each corner of the hall. Everyone receives a response with patience and a smile. The Yanuka will wait until the last Jew leaves, even if that means that he will be there until the wee hours of the night. We will get into his bio a little bit more in a bit, but this PDF does have some information about his background. At the age of 5, he already began learning Chumash and Mishnayos by heart, and to passionately read any rabbinic biography he could get his hands on. Every free moment was dedicated to reading and learning. Everywhere he went, he took books with him. His thirst for learning and knowledge grew from day to day. The fact that for long stretches he did not have friends who were his contemporaries caused him to completely sink himself into his studies. In place of playing ball with his friends, he entertained himself with stories of righteous people of previous generations. Thus began to blossom something which would one day become world-renowned. When his father saw his devotion and dedication to the Torah, he began to save every penny he could in order to buy all the books he could with great self-sacrifice. More than once did he take food from his own mouth in order to buy books for his son. The child, who was very familiar with his family's economic situation, never requested anything and wouldn't even tell his parents which books he needed for learning. One day his father summoned him and begged him to tell him which books he would need, at which time the child acquiesced. Even as a child, he was careful to internalize and actualize all that he learned with great care. He wrote a special prayer in order to remember and maintain his learning. Whenever he came across a novel matter, he would write it down in a special notebook. In his possession, one can find novel Torah ideas, which he wrote down at the young age of just 6. This paragraph talks about how the Yanuka has all of these rare handwritten notes and writings. These treasures were collected during the years in which his family traveled the world. Uncharacteristic of a rare book collector, he gave many of his treasured possessions to his students for safeguarding, explaining man's treasure is to assist others. This is how he leads in all ways of his life, and the greatest example he gives through his most treasured possessions. So you can see how the Yanuka is used to giving away things that mean something to him. In the course of preparing this article, I encountered a heartbreaking letter which provides rare insight into the child's world and the special relationship he enjoyed with his father. He implores his father to return to Israel so that he may grow up there. He understands why his parents need to wander in order to make ends meet, but he desires to go back to the Holy Land and to dedicate himself to the Holy Torah. He writes to his father, "Know, Father, that I, your young son, am constantly praying for you, that Hashem should bless you and provide for you at all times, that you are in the lands of the nations. You emit a great light and are the sun that shines in the darkness. Your heart is clear and pure. Who can even describe your virtues?" Now, this young kid wrote that. I'm assuming this is probably his father, but I don't know. It doesn't say. It probably does, but it's in Hebrew. One of his relatives is reminded of an informal tale from Yanuka's youth. When he was 9 years old, a business associate of his father's appeared at their home in order to present a potentially lucrative business opportunity. The father previously enjoyed a good relationship with this individual for a period of time, and the two of them met. One such meeting took place in their home. The father entered the house with this man and encountered his son characteristically studying. The child peeked at them for a moment and immediately returned to his learning. After the warm meeting ended, the child worriedly approached his father and explained to him that this man is not ethical and is liable to cause them great harm. The father, who valued his young child's insight, began to act more cautiously in all interactions with this individual, and even attempted to end the business relationship. A short while later, the public became aware of the true nature of this individual, and the child's intuition was confirmed. So this gives us a prophetic sort of implication as far as he's able to discern from people what their intentions might be. He has a unique intuition with people. It was shortly after his bar mitzvah. As he was wont since his youth, he prayed at sunrise and immediately after began his extensive course of learning. That day, after the morning prayers, he sat down to study with a stack of Sepharim in the corner of the shul, wrapped in the yearning of the Holy Torah. The gabbai of the shul, who witnessed his unusual dedication and his great love for the Torah, trusted him with the keys to the shul so that he could enter and learn at any hour that he desired. As they conversed, the gabbai noticed that the young boy was studying a sefer, which dealt with the study of Kabbalah. "You're still young. Why are you studying such sepharim?" The gabbai angrily asked and added, "You still have much to learn before this," he said, and took the sefer from Shlomo Yehuda's hands. The studious youngster tried to convince the gabbai to allow him to continue, but he insisted that his time had not yet come. As a last resort, Shlomo Yehuda, who desired with all his soul to continue to learn the matter that he was involved in, said to the gabbai, "I already learned all the sepharim that needed to be learned before this sefer." The gabbai heard his response but was not convinced. He made a deal with him. "I will first test you. If you pass the test, I will return the sefer to you." And the gabbai removed from the shelf a Gemara, opened it randomly, and asked, "What do the Tosafos say on so-and-so page at the top of the page?" The gabbai grinned derisively and was prepared to shut the Gemara and to go home after chastising the rebellious youngster. However, within moments, he would receive the shock of his life. Shlomo Yehuda began to cite the entire Tosafos word for word. As if this was not enough, he laid out the entire subject so that the gabbai could understand what the Tosafos were discussing. The learned gabbai was able to conceal some of the shock which had overtaken him and acted as if he was not yet convinced. He ran to the bookcase and removed another mesekes. And after that, he took out and it mentions these other books, and any other sefer he could find. Only when he finished testing the boy on all the sepharim in the shul was he convinced to return the sefer to the boy. He later told over that he was unable to sleep for many nights after what he had experienced. The gabbai, for whom nothing could prepare him for what he had witnessed, deeply apologized to the child. He later brought him a gift which had come into his possession in miraculous fashion. The Sefer HaTanya, which had belonged to the last Rebbe of Lubavitch, who had learned from it for decades. Now that's tied into the Kabbalah. He said to the child with great emotion, "Any sefer that you need, let me know, and I will procure it for you." The young man abashedly lowered his gaze and made but one more request. "Please do not tell a soul about what you saw here." So the child wanted to keep him quiet for now. As things tend to go, word began to spread publicly. First, it was only Torah scholars who would bandy about the name and address of this young genius, who was able to travel through all paths of the Torah. Those in attendance testify that the words are etched into their hearts and until this day leave an impression. There's more information in this PDF about his upbringing and childhood and so forth, and I'll let you guys read it if you're interested. The Yanuka refuses to establish his own shul and congregation. Quote, "At the end of the day, we are discussing a 30-something-year-old man. He doesn't feel that it is fitting for him to stand in front of people twice his age who come to seek him out." So it's saying he hasn't established his own congregation because it's all going to be about him. That is pretty interesting. When the Rav speaks about a certain righteous person, he transports you back to that period in time. You feel that you are removed for a moment and are with that righteous person, with that great person, with that historical personality. You literally feel connected to him. In order to bring you to this sense, obviously the Rav needs to be connected to them. And you see this with all the righteous people, the prophets, and so on. Literally all of them. The Rav is connected to each of them. He connects all of the approaches because all of them intended to bond us with Hashem, the only one. The Yanuka is very particular about his schedule. He learns at all hours of the day aside from a short rest. On Shabbos, he does not sleep at all, dedicating the entire night and day to learning and prayer. His daily Sedurim consists of all areas of the Torah, and you can see what those are. But note that it includes the Zohar and the Kabbalah. So you can see how him just reading through these things by memory brings it all to life for those who are listening. And here's an article that a friend sent to me I thought was pretty good. It's called Perfect Harmony, a compelling conversation with Rav Shlomo Yehuda, a gift to the generation. And it sort of starts with that semi-dramatic intro, just like the PDF brochure that we were looking at earlier had. We're outside, waiting for the Yanuka. It's silent in the deserted courtyard of the little shul. For even though coronavirus restrictions have been eased and the streets have again come to life, most people are in bed at this hour, but we're waiting. And then we see him. Soon we're face to face with this bashful young man who's taken the Torah world by storm, self-effacing, unremarkable in appearance, but so remarkable in the impact he's had on the lives of thousands who flock to him, hanging on his every word. Now, I'll spare you the attempts at the Hebrew, but it's saying basically that he's young, but he appeals to all ages. When he sits on the dais of packed halls, expounding on all parts of Torah by heart. The brim of his hat is just about covering his eyes, and at the same time that he's electrifying the crowd with his depth and breadth, he seems to be melting into himself. After all, he's just a vessel. And then when the shiur is over, the spellbound audience already knows what to expect. A Roland keyboard is brought out, and this shy genius, the Yanuka, as he's been known since his teenage years. Yanuka is a reference in the Zohar to souls who already, from childhood, are exceptional in their Torah knowledge. We'll begin to play a medley of stirring songs sure to awaken slumbering souls. His name is Rav Shlomo Yehuda Berry. To most people, he's simply known as Rav Shlomo Yehuda. And although he's not really a Yanuka anymore, he's 32 years old, which, by the way, he will be 33 in just a few days, same age Jesus was at crucifixion. He's still decades younger than many of his followers. Aside from the fact that he commands such respect, despite his young age, his popularity has skyrocketed, even though he doesn't peddle mystical deals. His merchandise is pure Torah, all of it, on the tip of his tongue. Your inner truth. Rav Shlomo Yehuda was born in Israel in 1988. His paternal grandfather, Rav Shlomo, was a scion of the sages of Yemen. His maternal grandfather, Rav Yehuda, made Aliyah from Aleppo, Syria. Aliyah means he returned to Israel. But note the connection to Syria. What did I say in episode 1? I felt like the Antichrist who would be revealed would come from Syria. And indeed, this guy's maternal grandfather was from Syria. His paternal grandfather was from Yemen. Now, if you look at the dominant religions in both of those countries, it's Islam. It's said that his pious grandmother, Naomi, poured out copious tefillos to merit a grandson. When he was born, she was overjoyed in realizing this child was destined for greatness. She would warn, guard the child and make sure his head covering never comes off for a moment. Naomi naturally assumed that this grandson would be named for her husband. After he passed away, she saved all her money and built a shul in his memory. I prayed for this grandson, she said. I want his name to be Shlomo. But his mother wanted to name the boy for her own father, Yehuda. In the end, a compromise was reached, Shlomo Yehuda. Now get this. And to this day, Rav Shlomo Yehuda sees one of the missions of his life as bringing peace to people. What have I been saying about September this year? If this is the guy, one of the missions of this guy's life is to bring peace to people. September 2021, peace treaty, Antichrist. There's an interesting part here where it talks about, as a young child, he was able to speak in front of a group of friends. And it's interesting, it says, it's as if they were watching a child possessed. But as Shlomo Yehuda's name began to spread, he reacted, shunning all media and fleeing from photographers. Today, Rav Shlomo Yehuda realizes that it's unavoidable. Yet even though he agreed to let our photographer do his job, he lowered his eyes and hunched into himself, clearly not one to pursue the limelight. So this kind of goes back to the whole idea of him being meek and sort of weak, and wants to stay out of the limelight. Now this section says that he is married since the age of 20, and this is where he settled, where he lives today, and where for the last 10 years he's been giving regular shiur and trying to avoid publicity. So this gives more credence to the idea that he is an unwilling public persona. He does it only because he feels obligated. So this is describing a little bit more about him. This right here is really interesting. This is his birthday. His birthday is 15 Iyar, or Iyar. The day the holy, spiritual, nourishing manna began to fall from heaven in the desert. Let's look at that for a second. So the Yanuka's birthday is coming up April 27th. So just in a few days. It's 15 Iyar, which Iyar is a month that on the Gregorian calendar falls between April something and May something usually. But look at this. His birthday falls on the same exact day that manna from heaven was rained down from God. The supply of matzah, unleavened bread, which the Jewish people brought out of Egypt enough for 60 meals, was exhausted on the 15th of Iyar, the 30th day after the Exodus. So they ran out of food. The people complained to Moses that they had nothing to eat. God notified them he would rain down bread from heaven to sustain them. So this guy was actually born on the anniversary. His birthday is the same day that God rained down manna from heaven on the Jews in the desert during the Exodus. Interesting that there's some other connections here between Ukraine and Russia, which I mentioned that earlier. Remember how we had read this before about he had married at the age of 20 and settled here? Rishon LeZion? Well, I had to look that up. I didn't know where it was. Turns out it's only a few miles, 5 miles south of Tel Aviv. And if you've been following this series at all, you'll know that I personally think that there will be a nuclear exchange at some point in the Middle East between Israel and Syria, and Damascus will get wiped out, and potentially Tel Aviv as well. So you can see how this guy's family, at least his wife, I don't know if he has kids, but at least his wife is in a place here where he is probably most of the time. That's pretty dangerous from the standpoint of if something happens to Tel Aviv. That's not that far away, 5 miles. As far as a nuclear exchange of sorts. Here's the map of it if you want to see it a little closer. It's right here, and Tel Aviv is just north of there. Do you guys remember how in Star Wars Episode 3, I think it was, when Darth Vader becomes, fully evil, Padme has died, it's the love of his life, and she had given birth to Luke and Leia, and he lost her, and then that made him fully go to the dark side. Personally, I think that this type of thing could be what plays out with this guy if he loses her in some sort of a nuclear event. If that happens, then you could see how anybody could potentially be pushed further and further to the dark side. So I just thought that was interesting. I really felt like that was something that I was supposed to bring up just because of the location of where they're living. And if he's in great demand by this point, if he's officially been named the moshiach, if he is that, he's not going to be around in Rishon LeZion very much. He's going to be in Jerusalem. So that could potentially leave the door open for something really strange and really bad to happen. So let's pray that doesn't happen, but we just don't know. I just thought that I would bring that up and let you all know. Now let's take a look at a short clip from this video where this guy is describing how the Yanuka has healed him.
I tried taking notes of the shear, but in the middle I had excruciating pains. I couldn't get them under control. It was warm and a bit stuffy inside, which added to my discomfort. It was hard for me to sit. I needed to stand up. I continued listening and writing, but it came to a point where I just had to leave because the pain was unbearable. I lost the flow of the shear, and I walked outside over to a very airy, open area. After about 20 minutes or so, I was able to go back to the shear, but was still in terrible pain. The entire time I tried listening and paying attention, but it was very difficult. I lost my concentration, and especially the Rav, he connects everything together. Even though he quotes from many different sources, in the end, everything comes together like a perfect puzzle. I couldn't put it together. I missed too much. After the shir, there's an opportunity to go for a bracha and speak to the Rav. You can speak very openly with him also. Sometimes he can be speaking with people until 4 in the morning, even later. I waited in line for my turn like everyone else. And if there would be somebody outside who didn't think he would even have a chance to speak to the Rav would make sure to bring him in and give him a chance to speak with him. The line starts with older people. Then you have the Rabbanim, followed by the rest of the crowd. So my turn came, and I asked the Rav for a bracha. He held my hand, and he gave me a bracha. And I said, Kavod Rav, I want to request a special bracha from the Rav. I've been having terrible intestinal problems, very painful episodes, and tomorrow I have an appointment with the professor whether or not I need to have an operation. I beg of the Rav to give me a bracha. I'm in so much pain. And he blessed me, but it felt like it was just a regular bracha. I was in so much pain that I said to myself, no, I'm not leaving here until I get a special bracha. While we're talking, I had excruciating pains. I could hardly stand up and speak. And I said to the Rav, I feel like I have daggers stabbing me inside. I need a bracha for now. Now I need the bracha for my situation now. The Rav grabbed my hands. You could feel his penetrating look as he was staring into my eyes. He said to me, it is forbidden that there should be any pain to a Jew. You cannot have or feel any pain, chas v'shalom. And he told me that in the merit of the Holy Torah, I bless you. He closed his eyes. He gave me a bracha with such intensity, saying that now you will have no more pain. You will have no need for surgery, no need for doctors. Everything will be as it never happened. Now I felt like this was the bracha I was waiting for, and I said thank you, and I left the room. I walked outside. It was about 3 a.m, and I was still amazed about the sheer. It was so incredible. The Rav. I started feeling a connection to the Rav over the past few weeks, and now even closer. I had really love in my heart for the Rav. I started walking, and about 5 minutes into my walk, still overwhelmed from the sheer and all the people and the Torah, I needed to digest it all. I suddenly realized that I didn't feel any pain. Now you must understand, I've had this unbearable pain for a very long time, and it's always some kind of underlying pain. And I've been here listening to a shir for 5 hours, and I was in excruciating pain. But now I feel no pain, nothing at all. I didn't really pay attention to it, but I'm not in pain. There are times that I have to go into certain positions to alleviate the pain, and now I don't feel anything. Well, it's time to go travel back to Yerushalayim, and you should know the worst times that I suffer is when I'm traveling. Traveling is always a big challenge. I always have to find the perfect position to be in while I travel so I won't be in pain. It's very difficult trying to figure out what position to sit in so I won't have pain. I'm always getting up and down and switching positions to avoid the pain. So I'm getting ready to sit down to find the right position that'll be the most pain-free, and I don't feel anything. I sit down and the pain isn't there. I change positions and still no pain. I think I'm dreaming. It can't be that over the past few months the pain has been so horrible and now I'm sitting down like a regular person. It's not even registering in my brain that I'm not in pain. I'm trying to find out like where the pain is. I can't find it, so I intentionally went into a position that I know always hurts me and there's no pain. I know there's got to be pain somewhere. There's always pain. I'm overwhelmed by the fact that I'm not in pain. I'm in shock. I'm afraid to share this with any of the fellows around me. What am I going to tell them? That tomorrow I have this appointment about my operation. Now the whole thing's just disappeared. It's all over. No more pain. I'm finished. I started telling myself, wow, look at the power of the bracha of a tzaddik. I was very emotional about it. I was all choked up while I was thinking about it. And I kept telling myself, wow, there must be pain somewhere. And I'm telling myself, what? Where's your amunah? Where's your belief in the power of tzaddikim? Why are you trying to show that it's not possible? You always believed in tzaddikim. You grew up knowing the power of bracha that the tzaddikim have. Okay, I said to myself, I believe, and I went home. I got home, my wife was already in bed, almost asleep. It was around 3:30 in the morning. She asked me, how was the shir? I said, oh, it was unbelievable. It was mind-boggling how I love this Rav. He is so unreal. I didn't even get to the point about my pain in the whole story. A few minutes later, I went to sit down on my bed. Now, you understand, when I sit on my bed, I have to sit in a very specific position, and it takes time. Meanwhile, it's going through my mind that I'm not in pain. I sit down regular on the chair, and my wife is staring at me, and she says, Yanki, what happened to you? How are you able to sit like that? Doesn't hurt you? I tell her, don't ask. I have to tell you, I have no more pain. Nothing. And she looks at me like I fell off the moon. I said, very emotionally, I got a bracha from the Rav. Then from a place of extreme emotion, I said, come look. I got up from my chair. I started jumping and dancing. Look, nothing hurts. I don't feel the slightest pain whatsoever, as if I never had any pain in my intestines. The next morning, I decided not to go to the doctor, and until today, I haven't gone. A year and a half later, no pain, no medications, no operations, as if I never suffered from pain in my life. From the moment I got the bracha from the Yanuka, no pain. It sounds amazing, like a story from the Baal Shem Tov. Yeah, you're right, this is like a story of the Baal Shem Tov. I don't feel connected to the Yanuka because of his bracha. I became close to the Yanuka because of his lofty level of ruchnius. Not that I understand levels, but this is the type of tzaddik I imagined about all the years. The tzaddikim of the Baal Shem Tov. These are the tzaddikim that are crying out to Hashem. They connect their avoda and their learning and their incredible grasp of the entire Torah to Hashem. It all comes together. It's one entity. Having the constant awareness of Hashem, that He is right in front of us, that is the tzaddik. We are so privileged to have such a relationship, and this is my personal relationship with the Yanuka.
I find it very interesting that the Yanuka is very musically gifted. As a writer and keyboard and piano player, I too am a music person. I don't put myself in the same category as far as his ability to play. I do play the keyboards some. Mostly I'm a drummer and percussionist, but I work primarily on the technical side of the music industry. As a producer and engineer, I certainly recognize talent when I see it, and he does have talent. I think it's interesting how Satan, before he fell, when he was Lucifer as a cherub, he was in charge of the music in heaven. That was his primary job, or at least one of them, and then he fell. But you can see how he took music with him from the light to the dark. And this guy, if he turns out to be the biblical Antichrist, also has a gift of music. In part 9 of End Times Dates, I had revealed what I believe God was showing me with regard to the meaning of 666. What does it mean? In Revelation 13:18, this calls for wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. To me, what that means is that using Gematria, you can figure out if this Antichrist person who's on the world stage, if this person's name in Gematria equals 666, so you're taking a letter and a number and combining them to get a code. So like A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3, and so on, you get a number. So when you add up all the numbers of the person's name, if it's 666, then he must be the guy. So, of course, that was the first thing I did when the Yanuka came on the scene. Here's what I found out. Before I show you what his name adds up to, I wanted to show you this. Revelation 13, where it's talking about 666, you'll notice the little D here. It also says that some manuscripts show 616 as the number. And I had heard that before in some other articles I had read. I personally hold to the fact that it probably is 666, but just know that there were some other manuscripts, some papyruses or scrolls or something that was found along the way, more recently I believe, that shows the number 616 instead of 666. So the process of figuring out the Gematria, as far as I can tell, seems to be to take the person's name and put it in a translator and go, first of all, from English to Greek. You can see that there's no difference here. This is the Yanuka's real name, Shlomo Yehuda Berry. Okay, so it's the same in Greek. When we paste that into the Greek to Hebrew, we get this. And then we take the Hebrew translation of his name and go to a Gematria calculator. I'm going to put it in here and select from the drop-down Hebrew Gematria. Let's see what it is. Drum roll, please. It's 618. Now, to confirm that, let's go over to this Torah calc, put it in there as well, and you can see that it is indeed 618. So I like to confirm that the number it gives me on this website is really an accurate number. I can do that by going to this secondary backup website, put it in this calculator, and it actually gives other versions of Gematria too, different methods. So 618 is his number of his name. It's not 666. However, the first thing I noticed was that 18 is 3 6s. So if you were to look at it close, his name is actually 4 6s. I ran some different versions of some of the many different spellings and names that this guy has, including having the Yanuka in there, which is really more of a nickname. And nothing got as close as using his full real name. That got me to 618 instead of 616 or 666. So there you go. Now, what does this mean? It could mean that if this is the guy, perhaps like Barack Obama, maybe he changes his name. Maybe he changes it later on to get to 666. Yeah, I know that's a bit of a stretch, but it is a possibility. Barack Obama did it, right? So other people have done it. When they get into a leadership role, they change their name. Or even if he just changed it slightly, it is possible that this is the guy and 618 is actually 4 6s. That's how I see it anyway. So you might be asking, is there any significance with the number 618? Let's have a look. The number 618, what does it mean? The 618 denotes an exceptional strength of character, a solid self-confidence, and a great attachment to one's own person. He lives without fear every moment of his life and knows how to carry out to the end all the actions he undertakes. His intelligence is lively and skillful and rightly allows him to shine both in the eyes of those around him and in his own eyes and to his delight. Characterized by the image of the leader, the person wearing the number 618 as an angel number is someone assertive, confident, and who overcomes obstacles thanks to his determination. He only trusts himself. He likes to be accountable to no one. He demands a lot from himself and from others. He cannot stand mistakes. He likes to shine and be admired and does everything to make it happen. That kind of explains some of the videos on his channel, doesn't it? The secret meaning and symbolism, the 618 is a master number. There are two, 11 and 618. It means that it has its own interpretation without having to reduce it. The master numbers denote exceptional qualities. And I would just note that 11 is something that I see all the time. I look at the clock sometimes, both times during the day, and I'll see 11:11 or 1:11, or maybe all three. During the course of the day, I might see 2, 3, or 4 versions of 11:11, 1:11, 2:22, 3:33. You know, it's pretty interesting. And I was almost killed on an 11th as well, April the 11th, 2016. When I was in a near-fatal car accident, and I was given a warning about that on March 11th, exactly a month before it happened. So 11 is a number that I identify with, and this guy's number is 618, and this website at least is saying that 618 and 11 are both master numbers. Okay, and here's where it gets interesting. The angel number 618 prefers to devote their energy to work for the common cause and the improvement of society rather than the pursuit of happiness. That seems to be true from what I can tell. Look at this one. The angel number 618 can fall into imbalance, chaos, even madness, or become a tyrant or a dictator. Now, I had mentioned World War III having potentially already started in March on the 24th, given some of the things the president of Ukraine did. We shall see how it plays out. I think it's still a little early in the process. April is going to be a big month as far as that goes, if it happens or if it doesn't happen. Know that the information that you can find on this is really kind of hard to find right now because mainstream media isn't reporting on it. They do not want to make the current occupant of the White House, they don't want to make him look bad, so they're basically not reporting on it. Hal Turner's doing a good job on his radio show and on his website. The link is at the top of the screen there, halturnerradioshow.com. Feel free to have a look at his site for more information, but just know that if anything happens like that, I will certainly come back on and do another report and update from a prophetic standpoint to see where we are. Because I really do feel like there will be some sort of nuclear exchange in the Middle East. When that happens exactly, I don't know. I do think it seems like it would need to happen between now and September in order for there to be a peace treaty, if this thing indeed plays out the way I think it will. So just stay tuned. And just as a final wrap up, I don't think that this guy is evil at all. I'm not even saying that. I do think that it's interesting how it really has fit in the timeline that I have been talking about for months, that this person, this guy is the Yanuka, was brought onto the world stage precisely in March, which is what I felt like I was being given in prayer for many months. And if he's the biblical Antichrist, he's not going to know it yet. I think it's really interesting that he seems like he's mostly like highly intelligent, very scholarly, but weak from the standpoint of physically weak. He seems sort of gimpy and hunched over and meek. And he seems like he might be very similar to a Jesus type of character. And note that he made his triumphant sort of entry into Jerusalem on Passover. And it wouldn't be that different than Jesus's triumphant entry into Jerusalem all those years ago before he was crucified. So you can see that there are parallels for sure. It's just a matter of, is he the guy? And I'm not even fully committing 100% to this is the guy, but I can tell you he fits the timeline, and to me, he fits the persona. The brilliance that this man has, I think, is you cannot look past that. They really love him and love his ability to quote chapter and verse of the Torah and anything else that he is able to talk about. I mean, he's clearly a brilliant person. I think that the Antichrist, when he arises, would have to be those things. The one question that I have is, are his connections to Islam deep enough for him to also be the Islamic Mahdi? I do think he probably has a photographic memory, in which case he could probably memorize and quote any Islamic scriptures that he wants to, from the Quran to the Syria to the Hadith, and talk about Muhammad probably as much as he wanted to. I'm not saying that he would do that. I'm just saying that it probably, from a scholarly standpoint, he probably could pull that off. I just don't know. That's one of the points that I'm not real sure about, because he does have connections. His grandfather, one of them was from Syria and the other one was from Yemen, both highly Islamic countries. And I think that it just remains to be seen. We'll just have to watch the Yanuka and see how it all plays out. I do think he's a very interesting character that just popped onto the world stage that I personally was not aware of, and most people were not aware of outside of the immediate area in Israel prior to Passover, March 27th, 2021. Be sure to download the free Truth Hunters app. You can find it on pretty much any platform. I'm now on there with my good friend Lindley Oz, and if you want to watch any of these shows on any other device, it's pretty easy to find it. And part 10 will be up here very, very soon. All the others are as well. Thanks for watching, and please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I'm still trying to build it after having lost my original Diamond Disc channel back in January. So I'm still trying to build it back up and get to where I was before. I appreciate it, and we will see you next time.